Death Knight. being able to rent ice because we were having some obstacles when it came down to being able to rent the ice. And that being that we were still working, or the town is still working in a 2019 schedule off the calendar, rather than being in a 2021 and 22 calendar. And the reason for this is because they're going by the COVID calendar. And so they're giving ice to the people that had rented in 2019 rather than it being first right of refusal. And we're just wondering why. So that's where I think we kind of ended in the presentation. So right now we're just wondering why that direction was given and what the reasonings were behind it, only because we believe with us trying to put our programs together for 2022, you really can't wait, and the town knows, you really can't wait last minute to develop programs in order for them to be successful. And so we're wondering, how do we go about figuring out a solution for both of us that we could rent ice and the town not be functioning in a 2019 calendar when we should be functioning in a 2022 calendar. Okay, now I'm just gonna go back to the notes I had. I had briefly ran through, so Skate 8 Georgian Bay has an agreement with the town of Wasaga Beach under bylaw 2018-03 that indicates that Skate 8 Georgian Bay will have and enjoy the exclusive rights to operate a private skating school between April 1st and October 15th at the Wasaga Stars Arena as a town preferred program for the years of 2018, 19, and 20. On July 21st of 2020, an amendment was made by bylaw 2020-82 with COVID measures added. Since this agreement has expired, upon discussing potential agreement with town staff, we have been told that it would be offered to Skate 8 for first right of refusal, and we're asking why. If the program and the agreement with the town has expired, should there not be like an RFP that goes out so that other schools that may have the abilities to run the same program that they have be able to either come into an agreement with town, or as a first right of refusal, then we would be able to get the ice. And with that, we're asking is because with having these 4 teams, we would need as much ice as we can get from April to August. Because if not, we wouldn't be able to plan accordingly because all the ice would be taken. In August of 2020, Hockey Circuit held its first successful hockey tournament. We had asked to supply a return to play protocol in order to host that tournament. We developed a return to play protocol, which was reviewed by the town COVID command team and the town staff. The protocol is still in place in 2022 for all of our hockey circuit programs. So we developed the program, we gave it to town staff, they approved of it, and all of our programs are still being run by that COVID protocol. Our understanding of COVID measures and rules the rules set by Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit are taken with great seriousness, as this is a large part of our everyday work environment in life. As the situation with COVID-19 changes, we adapt to the changes also. Communication with our local health unit is at the forefront, as we always have the current information when moving forward with any of our programs. So as we are currently in our 22 ICE scheduling calendar, we'd like to know what our next steps would be in order to be considered into a similar agreement as Skate 8 for the 22, 23, 24 season, with first right of refusal in 24. And we would also be like to be considered a beach program. So we'd like the support of the town so that when the town is offering or asking, when the community is asking where they should be able to go get skating lessons, other than the ones that are already running at the program, we would like to know that the town would refer us, just as they've done in the past with Skate 8. We would also like to make an agreement on price structure when we are considering to purchase bulk ice, kitchen rental, recreation halls, and cabins. We're familiar with bylaw 2008-24 that has a price structure that has been agreed upon till the expiry by 2020-82 for Skate 8 Georgian Bay. So they have an agreement that was made in the past in 2008 with scheduled or structured ice rental pricing and cabins and recreation hall and kitchen. So we'd like to work out an agreement also. We understand that many years have passed and changes have occurred, but we would invite the opportunity to work on a price structure that would be beneficial to both the parties, hockey circuit and the town of Wasaga Beach. We are unaware of any skate aid programs operating in Wasaga Beach. So currently, I believe she is only operating out of Creemore and out of Stainer. So we'd like to know that if she's not going to operate at the full extent that she is, we at least be able to put in an RFP or open up lines of communication with town to see what we could do to get more ice when available to us. We look forward to building a foundation and positive relationship with the town of Wasaga Beach, a place where we live, work, and play. We believe that the new arena will be a great addition to our growing town, and we would like to be part of that growth. Our academy has touched many children in this community and surrounding areas and has been a main focus for Hockey Circuit. Our children and their friends have many years of hockey and sports to enjoy. With the growth of our academy and bringing Hockey 365 to Wasaga Beach, we all benefit: the town, the community, the business community, and most importantly, the children. We would like to thank you, Chair Kenny, and members of council, and again, for all your time and consideration. That's all.
Thank you, Nina. And that was a great presentation, and I think all council enjoyed it. Right now, I'm going to open up to council for some dialogue or some conversation if anybody wants to ask further questions. Her Worship, please go ahead, Mayor Bychel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to staff. I know that the motion is to send this back to staff, so it will come back to us at a further date. So I don't see a big conversation today, other than if Chris could just maybe explain the process being used to allocate ice now, as I know there was a lot of talk about COVID and how COVID was being dealt with for safety reasons, but as far as the schedule goes, if he could explain, is this a catch-up? Because it's not something that council's been necessarily involved with, so it would be helpful to understand.
Good morning, Chair Kinney. In response to Mayor Byfolchi's question, I believe I should turn my camera on, but I can't get it. I'm locked out for the moment. Is that a process requirement to the clerk?
All I can do is ask you to start your video. Did that work? We see your screen, just not your face.
Each time it says I'm unable. There was a message, but I'm sorry everyone for the delay.
I think you can continue without
okay.
Video. It's fine.
Certainly, without my camera. In response to Mayor Byfolchi's question, the process that we are currently forced to use, we have an allocation policy that says if an individual rented the ice at a time and day 1 year ago, we will honor that time slot for the current season up until 30 days prior. And we've had a number of stoppages due to COVID-19, and it's created various irregularities. For example, minor hockey takes 2 or 3 weeks to mobilize when we are fed a new regulation by the province. But in a year's time, if there is no restriction, we've used the logic that says, no, we won't give away the ice that minor hockey was using at said time. We will allow them to continue through their traditional winter ice season. And this is why we have reverted to pre-COVID-19 schedules in order to give out the prior ice times. So I don't know that it's perfect, but this is the most fair way that we can more or less clarify to anyone interested in new ice what is and is not available. So that is an approach that I think has been clarified in council a number of times since March break in 2020. And we can dig into a further analysis and explain it better when it's referred back to staff.
Go ahead, Your Worship, and then Councilor Belanger.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. I just don't want people in the community to think we're picking and choosing. You are following a policy that is in place already. So I look forward to your your review coming back to council in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council Belanger, then Councilor Foster, please.
Thank you, Chair Kenny. I guess my question would be to Chris is that if we have an organization that is starting to demonstrate significant growth, and that could be extremely beneficial to the children of our community and the facility itself for the amount of rent, that we should at least reach out to the organizations that had rented previously and have an understanding as to their commitment. There may be a situation where they know previous to 30 days that they will not be needing the ice, or the other option, of course, is a compromise that we try to accommodate the best we can both organizations. So again, I think there has to be a consideration for an organization that has been very consistent, and then an organization that seems to have significant growth, because obviously that will be important to filling the rental availability of especially the new arena. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Belanger. Councilor Foster, please, and then Deputy Mayor Bray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, perhaps to Chris, we have an issue. We have an existing arena, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll have a twin pad. So I guess in that report, I'd also like to see, I know there's a smaller training rink, if you will call it, as opposed to the big, but can both of those be utilized to maximize ice time? If we have ice in both, would programming include both? And if we have a demand for it, from say say Skate 8 comes back on big time, and Pina's group, the hockey circuit, they're growing obviously. And if we have two groups that can literally fill an arena or fill a roster, can we use both sides? Anyway, that can come in the report. I don't need an answer now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Foster. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you. My only request was perhaps for timing, because it sounds like there's a sense of urgency if Hockey Circuit wants ice time this summer. I'm just wondering if we can ask for some timing of when we can expect this report back from Mr. Roos.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I believe Chris will expedite it. I know everybody has a lot on the plate, and I don't want to put demands on it. And I think I would like to turn to our CAO, George Van Wancourt, just to make sure that nobody's overloaded, but we get things back timely. George, could you kind of pipe in there, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think the question could go to Mr. Roos with respect to what he projects the timing to come back to committee.
Certainly, through you, Chair Kinney, to Deputy Mayor Bray, it is an important timeline we are following. To give some clarity, we absolutely are anticipating the future twin pad. Saga Beach has always been a source for summer ice. Off season is what we've been hearing from Hockey Circuit, and to their credit, they have been working hard to fit themselves into our schedule wherever possible. With regards to our staff report, the traditional 3-year fee schedule, which is where we intended to discuss the allocation on the second pad, we were planning for June. This is when we typically bring it to council. That gives us time to go back if the fees aren't acceptable, so we're ready for budget. But I think we can accelerate that, knowing that there's a lot of interest with the coming 2023 season. And if I promise for April 3 months, it gives us another 3 months to be organized so that we can truly set our policies and our prices well in advance of the budget season in the fall of 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Roos. Deputy Mayor Bray, please.
Thank you. I might be mistaken. I thought that there was a sense of urgency because we were, the deputation was looking for ice time in 2022. Is it 2022, Pina, or?
Correct.
both?
Correct.
Okay. And that
2022
was my
2023.
request for a sense of urgency, because if we're allowing the existing renters kind of a reservation on that ice up until 30 days before, it prevents any other business booking that ice, and then we might get a cancellation. So I guess those were the concerns that I had, is that we're holding it and we may or may not end up renting it if who we were holding it for doesn't take it.
Yes, certainly. I was piling up the layers when I received the question from Councillor Foster. And I think certainly we can answer the question about the 2019 legacy calendar that we've been working on and come up with a solution and a report to council within a month. So I can promise that immediately, and we'll be ready for coordinated committee in March on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Ruse. If there's any more dialogue, and I think Her Worship is right, we will be getting a report back for our consideration. And I do want to thank Pina and her people who have, along with the other organizations, really did a service for our youth in our community. And as a council, I think we'll do our best with staff to try and make everything work. Not seeing any more, I will read a motion and then get a mover and a seconder. That the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee received the deputation from Hockey Circuit pertaining to new hockey school and the program for Wasaga Stars Arena for information, and further that this item be referred back to staff for further review. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor Foster and Councilor Belanger. And all in favor? That appears to have passed 7-0. Thank you so much, Pina. Please have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Our next presentation, we feel goes better with the general government. So I, at this time, going to turn the chair over to Deputy Mayor Bray. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinney. The next presentation is a deputation by Kelly Donovan from Fit for Duty with regards to the whistleblower policy. And if the clerk could invite Ms. Donovan in, thank you. Over to you, Ms. Donovan.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I first of all wanted to say congratulations to the town of Wasaga Beach for taking the first step towards a whistleblower program. My name's Kelly Donovan, and I'm fairly new to Wasaga Beach. Up until 2017, I was a police officer with the Waterloo Regional Police Service. The concept of whistleblower programs is fairly new, but Canada was last out of 61 countries. I don't know if anybody watched that W5 episode. We were last out of 61 countries in a recent study by the Government Accountability Project in the United States when it comes to how well we protect our whistleblowers. So I came here today to share with you my story so that you really understand the fear of retaliation for whistleblowers. So in 2016, while working as a police officer, I saw some things that I knew, well, I knew they weren't right. They definitely made me feel as if I was crossing my internal morals and ethics in allowing these things to happen. So what I chose to do was in 2016, I made a presentation to my police service board, very similar to this, but that was in person at the time. And I basically said to the board that what I saw happening internally were abuses of power. What it was when police officers were under investigation themselves, they weren't investigated the same as members of the public. And this was specifically in relation to domestic violence. So it was an issue that I took very seriously and knew it had to be addressed. At that time, we didn't have any kind of whistleblower protection for police officers. And in fact, in 2016, I was actually prohibited by law to make a complaint against a member of my own police service. So I knew that had to change. And the way I went about change was to make this delegation. What happened about a week later is that I was served with investigation papers. I was put under investigation for misconduct. I was taken out of my job and placed on administrative duties. and I was actually ordered to have no communication with members of the Police Services Board. So that's what you call whistleblower retaliation. And I stayed in my job for about another 14 months before I resigned, because I knew that if I really wanted to make a difference, it was not going to happen within a police service. It had to happen from the outside. So I resigned in 2017. I started traveling across Canada, speaking at conventions about the need for better whistleblower protections in Canada. I recently published a book called Police Line Do Not Cross, and it's my story of being a Canadian police whistleblower. But the thing is that even after resigning, I still face retaliation, because the issue is when you decide to blow the whistle against somebody who is extremely powerful, the retaliation really never ends. And my ongoing litigation with my former police service, they've now spent over $500,000 in legal fees to continue to try to silence me. So whistleblower retaliation is real, and I can tell you there's really nobody else in this country that knows that better than myself. So that's why now I work with organizations to develop comprehensive whistleblower programs. And I often refer to the City of Calgary whistleblower program because they were one of the first municipalities in Canada to establish a program, and that was back in 2007. So if newly developed programs aren't considering what has been learned over the past 15 years, then sadly, I think we're just trying to continue to reinvent the wheel. I've looked at Collingwood's new policy, and I've identified a few gaps. So for one thing, I don't think you can limit those who can participate in the program. If you don't allow members of the public to utilize your whistleblower program, then your focus is too narrow. Because there may already be programs in place for members of the public to make complaints, but the difference between those existing programs and a whistleblower program is the confidentiality and anonymity afforded to complainants. It's not just a means of making a complaint, it's a system that will allow you to accept complaints that previously would not have been filed. Because when you live in a small community such as Wasaga Beach, the fear of reprisal is real for every resident. If you look at myself, I am a member of the public, and I'm still facing retaliation from the people that I blew the whistle against in 2016. So it's obviously harder for smaller municipalities to manage a completely independent whistleblower program. But with the help of external consultants, even through resource sharing with neighboring municipalities or counties, a successful program can be established. Because there are already established corporations in Canada that will anonymously collect complaints and even communicate with your complainants anonymously. And that would be a very affordable service that takes all the legwork out of having a whistleblower program. Collingwood suggested that the manager of human resources manage the program, but it also must be carefully considered how the individual receiving the complaints will be connected to those named in the complaints. Having an external party on retainer to triage complaints to determine when a full investigation is warranted eliminates the risk of internal manipulation of a complaint. This is all to say that the town has taken a very important step in the right direction, but let's not take for granted the knowledge and experience of previous whistleblowers, and let's ensure that the program achieves its intended outcome of providing a safe reporting mechanism. If you'd like to learn more about me, you can visit my webpage at kellydonovan.ca, but I sincerely thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Donovan. Mayor Bifulci.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation and sharing your story. I do want to correct one thing that I believe I heard correct, that there's fear of appraisal from every resident in our community, and I don't believe that that is an accurate statement. I think, I mean, we all as council members hear things from the public on a daily basis. I know how our organization operates, and we certainly, we can take criticism without going after people for sharing their opinions. So I just want to, I don't think that that's an accurate statement, but thank you for sharing your story. And I know our HR department is working on a report to come back to council. Thank you.
Am I able to clarify, Mr. Chair? Because I did not mean to insinuate that there was fear. What I meant was that if a member of the public came into some information or witnessed something, they would have a fear of reporting it. Because if you don't have anonymity and you put your name on an official complaint and it may be against someone in a position to influence your life, And if you think of situations where somebody is relying on a service provided by the city, whether it's for their business or personal, even something as simple as property tax, snow removal. I mean, if a complaint gets made and you don't have the anonymity, there's always a fear that the respondent to the complaint finds out who you are. If it is someone who services your neighborhood, they know who you are. There's grudges that get held, and that is reprisal. So it could be as simple as you make a complaint about your garbage man, then your garbage man starts negligently dropping your can and making a mess on your lawn because he knows you made the complaint. He knows your name. He might already know you. So that's what I meant by fear. Is the fear is that if you put your name on a complaint, there would be reprisal. So the whistleblower program helps those people who have a fear overcome their fear, make a complaint, and then the city gets so much more information than they would have gotten without the whistleblower program.
Thank you, Ms. Donovan. Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you for your presentation. It'll be interesting, and I certainly look forward to the report. I did, and I just was trying to look on one of my other screens here. In the Council Code of Conduct, there is, and I don't know why I'm thinking it's like in section 16, but don't quote me on that. There is a thing about no retaliation. I understand that's only council-based, but we do have a piece for it. And I do also believe that the people are always able to lodge a complaint to the ombudsman of the provincial ombudsman on municipal affairs. So, but I do, certainly I'm not minimizing anything. I want to see this. I do, when this was brought up by Councillor Belanger, I tried to recall back and I thought we dealt with that several years ago. And I realized it was actually my former employer, Scotiabank had brought in a whistleblower policy back at the same time. Maybe 7 or 8 years ago, there was a kind of a push to this, maybe a decade. So anyway, I certainly look forward to it, and thank you again for your presentation.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I can certainly understand the retaliation part of it, but I'm just wondering how many layers can we put on something like this? I can't find my notes now, but I made some notes a couple of weeks ago. And I came up with 10 different layers that are already available to the public. And we have the Municipal Act, we have Municipal Code of Conduct, we have a harassment policy that Councillor Foster mentioned where there's no retaliation involved with that. We have the Ombudsman's Office, we have the OPP, there's provincial legislation, I can't remember the acronym, there's federal legislation, there's an acronym for that too. And I might be missing a couple, but there's multiple ways to make a complaint. So now we're adding another layer on top of that. I know when you even send a letter to the editor, they want to identify you as a person, so that's not a frivolous or vexatious complaint, that sort of thing. So I have concerns about that part of it, where we've got multiple ways for the public to do something, and I'm not sure about adding more to it. That's my concern.
Councillor Belanger, I believe you were next.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Bray. I just want to point out that this was, the reason I brought this forward is our neighbors in Collingwood went through a very, very expensive inquiry. They had all of the safeguards that were just mentioned, yet after all of that, and after many, many months, if not a year, of peeling back the onion and discussion, staff brought forward a whistleblower policy because they believed that had it been in place, they very likely could have avoided a $7.3 million inquiry. Now that's not an absolute, but this was staff that had been heavily involved in everything that went on, all of the safeguards that were just mentioned, yet they felt it wasn't enough. They felt that there needed to be a more robust policy to protect a whistleblower because they felt there were people that had information that could have come forward that did not come forward for, I'm assuming, fear of reprisal.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And yes, well, that's all speculation on someone's part, but I did point out before there's 306 recommendations from Justice Morocco that came out, and the whistleblower report was not one of them. He deemed it not to be a recommendation. His very extensive report, $8 million later, and it did not come out of that. So I'm assuming he may be thinking that there's a lot of safeguards in place at the moment, but we'll see how this plays out. Thank you.
Thank you. So we certainly aren't debating the need for a whistleblower policy right now. We're simply receiving this report or this deputation from Ms. Donovan for information as we consider a whistleblower policy for our town. Councillor Kinney, I apologize. You were definitely next.
Deputy Mayor, no worries. And to Kelly, I want to thank you so much for your presentation. I do support the whistleblowing policy. And I just want to bring two words that I've heard through the debate to back in: fear and belief. Each one of us have different beliefs and fears. And yes, there's multiple levels of possible getting information to individuals, but if that individual believes that there's a fear there, they won't use it. So yes, there's countless ways that you can bring information, but if we can add, and I don't think it's a layer, I think it's another avenue, then I think as a council and as stewards of this community, we need to provide that in some form, because I'm also looking towards staff to bring back a report. And but again, Kelly, thank you so much for your presentation.
And Mayor Bifulci, final word.
Thank you. Just a final comment. Sometimes comments are made comparing ourselves to Collingwood, and quite frankly, I think we're very different than Collingwood. I think we have practices in place here that exceed maybe what others are doing. But the statement that, you know, they had all the safeguards in place that we have here, I don't know that that's an accurate statement. So I just ask that we deal in facts. If we make these statements, then I think we need to be backing that up with information. But again, I look forward to the staff report.
And thank you, Ms. Donovan. 20-something years ago, I worked in the automotive industry for a brief period of time, and certainly that was the first time I had heard of whistleblower policies, and at that point couldn't imagine why everybody didn't have them. So I do think it's a good step moving forward. Thank you again for your presentation. So
Thank you very much.
The motion reads that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee received the presentation from Kelly Donovan of Fit for Duty pertaining to whistleblower programs for information. I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Belanger, Councillor Watson, all in favor? And that motion passes unanimously. So Chair Kinney, I will hand the mic back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bure. We have no unfinished business, other agency reports, Fire Department monthly report. I would like to call on Chief McWilliam to do his fantastic report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kinney, and good morning, Your Worship, members of Council. In the month of January, the Fire Department responded to 122 calls for service. It was a fairly uneventful month, no major fires or incidents. We did have one rescue call that was noted in the report. This occurred in the mid-afternoon of January 22nd. We were called to a snowmobile accident that turned out to be several kilometers into Blueberry Trails. The department, we used our UTV and were able to access and remove a adult female patient with a lower leg injury. So again, that piece of equipment came in very handy for us. We also attended several, I think it noted 7 motor vehicle collisions in January. Most of those were weather-related incidents. And finally, the fire department is again back to in-person training as of the beginning of this month. We do divide the firefighters into smaller groups and continue to wear face coverings for safety. And that's all I had, a brief report this month.
Thank you, Chief. And that's great that we can utilize the tools that are there to help our community out. Any discussion through on the Chief's presentation? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee received a January 2022 Fire Department report for information. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Belanger and Councillor Wells. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. That passes 7-0. Now we're going to move down to the consent agenda. I have 2 items here pulled, and it's 3.5.4 by Councillor Belanger and 3.6.1 also by Councillor Belanger. I'm sorry, please go ahead, Councillor Belanger.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Kenny. 3.5.4 was for comment only, not to be pulled. Thank you.
Thank you. That clarifies a bit. Is there any other items that council would like pulled at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to go to our clerk. Do I read the motion first and get a mover and a seconder and then the comment, or comment first?
You could do the comment first, Councillor Kinney.
Thank you. Then Councillor Belanger, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Being we had deputations and technical problems, I'll be very brief, but this is related to the Recreation Events and Facility Department report. And I just wanted to congratulate Chris Roos and his team, because despite COVID, we have had a very robust programs and events, and they've been very diversified among youth and seniors. So I just congratulate them on the amount of activity that has continued. And the other that stuck out as deserving of a comment was that the youth center had received a diversity and inclusion award. So again, congratulations to your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belanger, and no, that's great to hear. At this time, I will read the consent agenda motion, omitting 3.6.1, which is still pulled. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee hereby received the February 10th, 2022 consent agenda items 3.4 through to 3.6, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster and Deputy Mayor Bray. And then I'll call the motion. All in favor for that? Thank you, Council. That section moves 7-0. Now we'll move down to, there it is, 3.6.1, and Councillor Belanger, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you much, Chair Kinney. In the library report, it referred to an update to the archives, and I was looking to, as you know, I had expressed some concern as to the location of the archives and was hopeful that it would be encompassed into our new library, given the expense of the property. But I was wondering if we're tracking visitation to the archives, and I understand that we're not in peak season right now and it may take some time, but I do believe there's some efficiencies related to staffing and overall costs. And you know, I'm not convinced that the current location is the right location long term, but I do think we need to put some measurement in place to understand the utilization of that facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Belanger. Councilor Wells, please.
I think that it's premature to expect that information at this point. As the councilor will be aware, part of the budget is the hiring of a coordinator manager to work with the volunteers to run the archives, and it's set up to be, you know, full hours during the summer and shorter hours during the winter months. So I think it's a little premature to expect to have that kind of information until such time as we get the coordinator in place and give them a chance to start to initiate output to community groups, clubs, and organizations to invite them in. I'm not at this point concerned about not having that data. I will be concerned about not having that data if we're still in this situation 4 months after the coordinator is appointed. But until that point, I'm comfortable with it, and I'm more than comfortable with the location being what it is.
Thank you, Councilor Wells. Again, Councilor Belanger, please go ahead.
Yes, I agree with Councilor Wells as to the timing. My point was, at this point, I'm not sure if we're measuring visitation. I think that could start very quickly and is not a cumbersome job to do without the new coordinator. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Belanger. Councilor Foster, please.
Yeah, and I'm fine with getting those numbers. I would point out, though, that the archives is not run by the library or library board. It's run by the clerk's department. So again, it will be the clerk who will provide those numbers going forward. And once the archive starts to have both manpower, person power, and hours of operation, then those numbers should be reflected and expected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Foster. And I do see Ms. Pell here on the screen. I was wondering whether or not you would like to make a comment. You don't have to, but I just saw you and didn't want to neglect you being there.
Hi, through your worship. Thank you, Councillor Kinney. Belanger was alluding to where our minutes, I reported back to the board the status of the archives. The library had been considered the new management of the archives. At the time, it was decided that no, we would not be. However, I do want to reiterate that the library is willing and able and certainly available to assist with anything that needs help in the archives operations moving forward. So please just ask, and we're there to support that endeavor.
Thank you very much for that comment. Any other dialogue comments? Not seeing any. I'm going to read the motion that the community service section of coordinating committee receives the Wasaga Beach Public Library Board minutes of November 15th, 2021 for information. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Foster and Councillor Watson. And I'll call the vote. All in favor? Seeing all that moves unanimously 7-0. And at this point, I would be more than happy to turn the chair over to Councillor Watson for Public Works section. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinney. We're now moving into the Public Works section. We have no deputations, presentations, petitions, or public meetings. We have one item of unfinished business. There are no other agency reports. So we will now move into the consent agenda. And my notes tell me that 4.5.1 and 4.5.2 have been pulled. So we will set those aside for separate discussion and a vote. And I will read the resolution for the rest of the consent agenda. Resolved that the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the February 10th, 2022 consent agenda, items 4.4 through to 4.6, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Kinney, seconding it. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, those in favor? That is carried unanimously. And we will now move to Councillor Belanger has pulled 4.5.1, which is the request for quotation for the screening of sand. Councillor Belanger.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Watson. Yes, I'm looking at the quotation, this additional fill required for the library and arena, the total of the screening for the amount required is just under $53,000. I wanted to ask our Director of Public Works if transportation to the site is included in that, or is that over and above?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Belanger, this is just for the screening operation. The material is still stockpiled and it'll be transported by Public Works staff when needed. So no.
Thank you. So I had previously had a conversation with our CAO about the cost of transportation, and I don't know if it included this second group, but at the time it was $68,000. So and I had asked if there was confirmation that those costs were shifted from Public Works to the library and arena project, and it was not clarified at that time. So I don't know if it's the CAO or the treasurer could let me know if in fact the transportation of fill and the screening will be in fact charged to the library and arena project.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, I'll review this with the treasurer and get back to members of council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion at this point? Seeing none, I will read the motion. Resolve that the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee does hereby recommend to council that Darren Neal and Sons Excavating be awarded RFQ number PW 2021-19 for the screening of sand at the price stipulated in their bid submission. Staff report 175 Zoo Road, screening of sand. May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gray. Those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. 4.5.2 Capital Works Project Status Report. That is pulled by Councillor Belanger. Go ahead, please.
Once again, thank you, Councillor Watson. Yes, I had some questions and concern related to the project of Beach Area 1 roadways, streetscaping, and detailed design. Like clearly, we had a change in direction in that Slate has removed themselves from further negotiation. I had expressed some thoughts about our second option proponent in camera, but I believe we're a ways away from a confirmation of our ability to move forward on the project and complete all 5 phases in a realistic time frame or a reasonable time frame. And although there's no amounts in the items listed as moving forward this month related to this detailed design, I had expressed earlier that I felt that we should put this on hold until such time as council has a clear understanding that we in fact do have a developer that we believe is capable to move this project forward and to complete the 5 phases. Obviously, there's a significant change to Beach Drive, and unless all 5 phases can be completed, or at least a loop, it's going to look very dysfunctional. And I'm just not convinced at this point that we need to be spending money on something that we're not sure what the timing will be to commence or to finish. Thank you.
Okay, anything further at this time? Seeing none, I will read the motion. Resolved that the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the February 10th, 2022 Engineers Capital Works Project Status Report for information. May I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Bray, seconder, Councillor Wells. Seeing no further discussion, those in favor, please. Those opposed? Councillor Belanger. So that is passed 6-1. And that ends the Public Works section. Would we like to have a 5-minute break, 10-minute break? It's now 10:18. I'm seeing a yes, so is 10 minutes okay, or come back at 10:30? Does that work well? 10:30? Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
We're live.
We're good. All right. Well, thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone, to the Development Services section of the Coordinated Committee. Excuse me. I'll start with deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings. There are none. Unfinished business. We have a few items here that we will eventually get to. There are no other agency reports. The consent agenda is here. I will note 3 items pulled and 2, I believe, for comments. So items 5.5.2 was Councillor Watson's conflict of interest. It'll be pulled. 5.5.4, I believe it is being, hang on, let me look at that, is being pulled as well. And 5.6.2 is being pulled. I will also note that staff has requested that 5.5.1 be removed from the agenda and it'll be brought back at a future meeting. They want to have some more consultation with all the parties involved. So those are the items that are pulled. The items requiring comment are 5.5.5 and 5.5.8. So we will start with the comment section. 5.5.5, Councillor Watson, you wanted to make a comment on this? Go ahead if you do, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Foster. We're talking about 5.5.5. The patio program, correct? Yes, I just wanted to comment that I was very happy to see this program continuing for this year. That was a recommendation from the Business Recovery Task Force last year. It seemed to be very successful, help their businesses, and looking forward for helping businesses this coming year. Thank you.
I agree 100%. It's a great program. Now, 5.5.8, Councillor Belanger, I think you had some comment on the municipal comprehensive review part. Go ahead, if you will.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Foster. I just feel that it's extremely important, obviously, that our official plan is completed in a timely manner. Like, I know there's been a lot of delays, but I think that the completion of our official plan, along with the work that's being done by the county, is important. And I'm unclear at this point if we have an estimated date of completion. I had heard somewhere along the line that a number of priorities are in play and that there could be further delay. But do we have an estimated date as to when the official plan would come before council for approval?
I'm sorry, is this a question or a comment? Are we pulling?
That's a question to our Director of Planning.
Are we pulling the item because we haven't done the consent agenda yet?
Oh, well, we can, it's just a comment. It can come back at a later time. So that's fine.
Point of order. The question wasn't relating to the item on the agenda.
Well,
the item on the agenda is the county's municipal comprehensive review, not the town's official plan.
I understand that, but they take the town's official plan into consideration in coming to their decisions. So that was, thank you.
All right, the item wasn't pulled, it was a comment, and the comment's been made and staff have heard it. So I think we'll just carry on from there then. All right, we'll go to the consent agenda piece. And let me get to that. It's resolved.
Chair Foster, I'm not sure if it was clear if 5.5.1 is being pulled from the agenda to be referred back to staff, or if that is just being removed from the agenda.
I got a request from staff that it be removed. It will come back, but they wanted to have a more complete report. So Doug, do you need to add anything to that, or was that suffice?
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Staff are recommending that committee defer any decision on this matter at this time, and that we would report back to council later this month, and that would give staff extra opportunity to discuss the conditions of draft approval with both the applicant and also with the Huron-Wendat Nation.
Okay, to the clerk then for some definition on that. They're asking for a deferral. That's a motion then?
It would be a referral motion. Deferring means that we would be bringing the report back at a later date, and we would, but referral means that we might add more information, change, have some more consultation. So we're going to refer it back to staff, and I would think that it'd be clearer if we put it in the, if we vote on it separately as a refer back to staff.
Okay, so that'll be a pulled item. So the pulled items will be 5.5.1, 5.5.2, 5.5.4, and 5.6.2. Okay, thank you for getting that clarification for me. I will then read the consent agenda resolution. Resolved that Development Services section of the Coordinated Committee hereby receives the February 10th, 2022 consent agenda items 5.4 through 5.6, and that all recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately, as I've already listed. Mover, please, for that. Councillor Kinney and Deputy Mayor Bray, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. To 5.5.1, there's a motion that this be referred back to staff, I guess that's the motion in total, is that this item be referred back to staff. I'll ask for a mover and seconder on that one, please. That's Councillor Kinney and Councillor Wells. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 5.5.2 under subdivision and condominium matters. This was the one Councillor Watson has declared a conflict of interest on, and he has removed himself from the meeting at this moment, or shut off his video anyway. And this reads that Development Services section of the Coordinated Committee recommend to Council that the application for exemption to park lot control PL 04-/21 to permit the division of blocks 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7, Plan 51M 1203, as illustrated in attachment number 2, into 41 lots, and that the appropriate bylaw be passed by council upon consideration of this report and registered on title for the subject lands thereafter. That Development Services section of the coordinating, I think that's the same thing. It's written twice. No, it is. No, it isn't. Sorry. That Development Services section of the Coordinating Committee recommend to Council that the application for exemption to part lot PL 0421 to permit the division of Block 4, Plan 51M 1203, as illustrated in Attachment 2, into 7 lots, and that the appropriate bylaw be passed by Council, conditional upon lands at Part 35 obtaining minor variance approval from the Committee of Adjustment to address the setback non-compliance issue, and the subject lands be registered on title thereafter. I apologize for the slight misread there. That being said, I'll ask for, Councillor Wells, you wanted to talk about it first?
Thank you, David. Just a question for Doug. I'm wondering why the approval for a setback compliance issue is going to Committee of Adjustment. If we're talking about a variance to zoning setbacks, in past history, it seems that those came to council for consideration. So I'm just wondering where the difference is.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. The use of Committee of Adjustment would be the appropriate body for this one. It's a one-off. Typically, if there's a setback adjustment that would apply to any property zoned a particular zone, then we would bring it to council because it has a very broad-reaching effect or impact. In this case, it would just be one singular property where the variance is being requested, and Committee of Adjustment would be the appropriate body to deal with just one single property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. That's Councillor Kinney, Deputy Mayor Bray. All those in favor, please. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item that was pulled was 5.5.4, the Economic Development January Activities Report. I'll read it, get it on the table, and then Councillor Belanger can make his comments before I take the vote. So I'll that the Development Services Section Coordinated Committee received the Economic Development January Activities Report dated February 10th, 2022 for information. A mover and seconder, please. Councillor, or Your Worship and Councillor Wells. Councillor Belanger, you wanted to speak to this? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Foster. Yeah, I had actually talked to Caitlin about this as well. But in the report, it indicates a net gain of 29 new businesses, 75 businesses opening, 45 closed. And on the surface, that can appear to be very positive. But what I suggested is that we maybe need, again, some key measures. You know, we've had some businesses that have had 30 employees that have closed. And then you have businesses open up that could be a single owner or a couple, mom and pop. So I just believe to give us a better indication of the health of our local businesses and the economy, that we need to put a little more measure to that. And I know we had done a survey, but I also suggesting that potentially a survey after peak summer season and after peak Christmas season of at least a portion of our business community would give council a good indication of how we're faring out. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Caitlin, I saw you pop in. Do you want to make some comment on that?
Yeah, so we can, through you, Chair Foster, on our visits in order to have more indication of the health of our businesses in our community. We can add these suggestions to our recording so that we have more readily something council would like to see.
Okay, thank you for that. I have called, did I get a mover? Oh, Councillor Watson, I'm sorry, yes, you wanted to speak to it.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. I was just going to congratulate Caitlin and the Economic Development team for the report. I think it's very positive that we've had a net gain of 29 businesses, and I'd really like to congratulate the business people that have shown the fortitude and, quite frankly, the guts to open up in a pandemic and to open up a business in Wasaga Beach, hire people. So I think it's very positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments, George. I agree. It's good of them, but considering we're now a bigger town than the town to our west, you know, there's reason to be here. Did I ask for a mover and seconder on that one? Yeah, I did. Okay, thank you for nodding, everyone. I'll call all of those in favor, please. All right, that's carried unanimously. Next, we go to 5.6.2. Let me get there, please. This is the bed and breakfast kitchen facilities item, and that was pulled by Councillor Belanger. I'll let you make your comments before I read the resolution. Please go ahead, Councillor Belanger.
Thank you again, Councillor Foster. Yeah, I was going to recommend a small amendment that rather than put January 1st, 2023 in place, I think it should be January 1st, 2023, or at such time that the bylaw has been reviewed and revised and brought before council, whichever is the later date. I think that if January 1st comes along and the bylaw has not been reviewed and updated, we're just creating another situation. And I think the whole premise of this is that the bylaw would be reviewed and brought before council and the decision made. Thank you.
Okay, I saw Councillor Wells, Deputy, or the Mayor, Councillor Watson, and then the Deputy Mayor, in that order. Starting Councillor Wells, please.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, David. A question, I'm hoping that somebody from bylaws online here that could maybe answer the question. Rachel, I see you're on the screen. My recollection from several years back when we reviewed the whole bed and breakfast situation in the town was that there was a requirement for any applicant to a bed and breakfast license to be a member in good standing of the Ontario Bed and Breakfast Association. I'm just curious as to whether that still stands as an item within the bylaw, or has that somewhere along the line during my absent years got taken out? That's my first question, Rachel. Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your question. It is still a part of the bylaw, just associated with business licensing, not with zoning.
Correct. It's a business license requirement that a bed and breakfast be registered and in good standing with the Ontario Bed and Breakfast Association. Yes or no?
I don't believe that it's registered, just that it's in good standing.
Okay, I'd have to look to some colleagues from years back, but I thought that was a requirement that we put in place because of inspection. It assisted with inspections and whatever. Second question,
oh, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there. I just wanted to clarify that it wouldn't impact a business of getting a business license or not. I believe just sometimes they do show it as a part of their application. But it's not like a requirement in the business license of if they weren't registered or in good standing with it.
Well, I stand to be corrected, but I think at some point in time, the bylaw for a business license required that they be in good standing with the Ontario Bed and Breakfast Association. However, if that's not there, I wish it was. Secondly, the Simcoe Street number 7, Simcoe Street number 11 was also mentioned in the previous report. Can you tell me the relationship between Simcoe 7 and Simcoe 11? Because of course, one of the criteria within bed and breakfasts provincially is that the owner operator must be on site and must have their living quarters on site 24/7. Obviously they can go shopping. When I say 24/7, that, you know, they obviously go shopping or whatever, but that in fact is their primary residence and that they live in that residence. I believe hopefully that's still the case, but we were talking about two different addresses at some point, Simcoe 7 and Simcoe 11. So I'm not sure if both of them are registered as bed and breakfast and how the owner can be living in both residences.
Yeah, so just for clarification, I believe the report that zoning and planning did was just in relation to 7 Simcoe, where the current bed and breakfast business license is. So from our records, the owner lives on site. We do have conditions on the business license, not that they necessarily need to be there 24/7 for, you know, grocery shopping or leaving, but between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. they would need to be on the property and reside there full time, which I believe for the purpose of this report is in conjunction. I think there may have been conversation about 11 Simcoe as there were complaints pertaining to possible amenities being used at that property, but that is not licensed with the town at all. And I think we're just specifically referring to 7 Simcoe and the bed and breakfast there.
Okay, and again, I'm not trying to make it difficult for the owner. That's not my intention, except that I think the minute we start making exceptions, we set precedents. And we spent a long time looking at short-term, long-term rental accommodations a couple of years back. And the minute we start to relax some of those or make exceptions to the situation, I think we've set a precedent that we may or may not want to have within the town as it relates to short-term rental within a residential zone. So I am concerned. I've traveled bed and breakfast for years. It's our primary way of travel. I have never yet gone to a bed and breakfast where I had cooking facilities in the rental room that I was, the bedroom that I was renting it from a bed and breakfast. I had access to the cooking facilities in the kitchen of the residence to use as I saw fit, but never did I ever have full, virtually an apartment situation within a bed and breakfast. So I'm struggling to accept this as a new standard for the town.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Joel or Doug are on here to speak to that, but it does. It's in regard to zoning requirements and bylaws. And just for clarification on your first comment, I don't see it in the bylaw as a regulation for the bed and breakfast, so I do stand corrected. And I can also provide any correspondence later just to further clarify that.
Okay, thank you for that. Doug, do you have anything to add briefly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Per Councillor Wells's comments, I also recall that when the bed and breakfast topic was initially reviewed by town staff, there was a criteria that they be in, the operators be in good standing with the Bed and Breakfast Association. However, I will apologize, I haven't kept up on any changes that may have occurred since that time, and that was well over a decade ago, as I recall. On the second point, in terms of 11 Simcoe Street, I think the report that was presented by staff does provide some background of the complaint with 11 Simcoe, and that complaint has been ratified. I do not think that at this time the operator at 7 Simcoe is using 11 Simcoe or the amenities in the rear yard of 11 Simcoe. And then in terms of zoning, the real issue is that the definition of bed and breakfast in the zoning bylaw would not allow cooking facilities to be in the rooms. And that is, in fact, the zoning non-compliance issue that we're looking to address here, and seeking some extension to time to give staff the opportunity to review that matter. And through the official plan update and the zoning bylaw update, this is a specific topic, the application of short-term rentals going forward that we want to look at. So that's part of the justification for recommending that we provide some amnesty for a period of time.
Okay, I do have a list of speakers. I will, Councillor Belanger, is yours a follow-up to your original request? Because I know there's a request for an amendment. No, if it's just a general comment, I'm going to go through all the speakers. I'll just put you to on the list. Okay, thank you. I believe your worship was next. Thanks.
Thank you. Just in support of what Councillor Wells was saying, I definitely recall something dealing with being in good standing. I think since we dealt with that, and it was probably a decade ago, Airbnbs have become a bigger discussion. Induction stoves now, and it's my understanding that some of these units have induction stoves which don't cause the same fire hazard as others. So I think that there's been a lot of things happening. So I'll support the recommendation. I don't support a change in the date. I think keeping the date there of January 1st, 2023 keeps a bit of a fire under staff to get it done. I'm thinking back to the TAC program, and I don't know that we've totally finalized any of that. So I think that having dates on things is a good idea. So I would be supporting it as is. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I believe Councillor Watson was next on the list.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. First off, I would like to commend everyone that participated in this report. It was exhaustive. It took a bit of time to read. There was a lot of background, and I really commend you for reaching so deep into it. And I'll preface my remarks with saying I have no problem with it going back to staff to come back with some suggestions to address as the mayor just said, things have changed in the last 10 years. And I remember it was a big discussion at the time to bring B&Bs into town, and we wrestled with it and we came up with a program, and it's been pretty successful so far. I won't be supporting option 3 at all at this point. I would be more comfortable with option 2 at this point. The option 3 seems to be very specific to this property, which I don't think is fair to the other B&Bs in town, to give one a leg up on the other ones. Whether they want to do it or not is up to them. You know, these appliances were put in 2019, the report says, which is pre-COVID, so that has nothing to do with distancing or anything else at that time. It's, as Mr. Heron says, it's non-compliant with the zoning. That seems to be the biggest issue. And again, the report refers to the owner advertising it as an Airbnb, which is an illegal use of the property in an R1 zone. So that seemed to be an issue. They seem to be somewhat resistant to complying with the stoves. They've been disconnected in some forms, but there's been many meetings, I understand from the report again, to make sure that these aren't being used, plates to go over the plugs, that sort of thing. And I see a real can of worms opening up by allowing this, or going into R1 zones as Airbnbs, because you know the subdivisions are very homogeneous in town. Everyone has a home. They were all built by one builder, and starting to allow this type of thing within subdivisions, it's going to be a problem. People aren't going to like that, to have that happening in there. So by allowing this in an R1 zone right now, and I think it was within an hour after the presentation by the owner of the property, we had emails from people saying it's not all wine and roses here. There's problems with it. We got those emails from people in the area that were talking about it. So I can't support option 3. Option 2, I think they should either go for a site specific or operate the way any other B&B in town has. That's the only property that's had complaints. There's 4 complaints on it. So I think we need to be firm about this. We have processes in place. This was done. This is almost a case to put it in and ask for forgiveness later, is what it appears to be. So that's my point on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor, I believe you were next on that.
Thank you. Just to give a little history to those that are wondering about the removal of membership in the Bed and Breakfast Club of Canada or Association of Ontario, that certainly came to the table last term of council. I remember my involvement was with a bed and breakfast owner who just said, it's really just another tax on a tax. By saying that I have to have that license in order to get my business license from the town, that association does nothing that I need. So they weren't doing the inspections that maybe they were 10 years ago, but it was basically a membership fee that said, hey, you can use our advertising, you can use our how to set up a bed and breakfast videos. So they were no longer inspecting and giving us what we wanted out of it, but the bed and breakfast owners just felt, well, I have to pay their $150 on top of your $150, and I already have my own clientele and I do my own marketing and I don't really need that association. So that just gives a little bit of history as to why that would have dropped out of the bylaw. Because I know at the time it came to us from a bed and breakfast operator in town. Not this one, but certainly one at the time. And yeah, that's all I was going to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. And again, to Councillor Wells, it was the FOBBA at the time, back in the day, the Federation of Bed and Breakfast Association of Ontario Bed and Breakfast Association. I do remember that. Councillor Belanger, and then I saw her worship put her sign back up. Councillor Belanger, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Foster. Just speaking to a couple points, and this is my recollection of between the report and what's been said in the past, but my understanding is the appliances were put in, but they had been, the facility had been inspected by both bylaw and fire, with no complaint at that time, and they had operated for a number of times. I think the issue right now, if I'm understanding correctly, is that we are unclear as to what council's decision will be, whether this is a temporary measure to allow businesses to operate effectively through COVID when they can't use a central kitchen facility, or whether it would be something that we would approve for an ongoing period of time. So I think right now I can certainly support option 3. I could support an option that would allow other facilities to, if it was the requirement for them to continue to be viable, to offer similar appliances for a period of time. Mind you, they would know that on January of next year that may cease, because it's at that point that we will hopefully have reviewed the bylaw, have it brought forward to council, and make a decision.
Okay, thank you for that. Your worship, you had a comment, and then I will ask staff if they have anything to add to this after, and then we'll get back to Councillor Belanger's original request for a modification to the resolution. Your worship.
Thank you. Just a final comment that I would ask staff to consider is that, be it a bed and breakfast, an Airbnb, the accommodations, a motel, hotel, whatever it might be, we hear and have heard for years, you can have your inspections, everything can be great, but then come the weekend, you're 50 people crammed into a place that shouldn't be there. The police get called, bylaw gets called. It's this constant cycle. So I think through our business licensing, we also need to review, are our resources being used appropriately after they've received all of their approvals? Do there need to be stronger things written in place that go back to the owner of the house, not just the people using it, but the owner or the manager and those types of things, because we do get complaints, and I think we need to be able to deal with those properly, not just, oh, well, we dealt with them this weekend, knowing full well it's going to be again next weekend. There needs to be a bit of a thing there that if you don't comply with the rules and not disturb your neighbors, there's consequences to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll get to you in a sec, Councillor Wells. I'm going to actually put in a couple words here if I can. Again, along the line, we've heard discussion of bed and breakfast versus Airbnb. And the challenge we have is there are, I believe, 11 bed and breakfasts running in this town who've come forward. And it was mentioned earlier, they put it in and put these things in early, and we're asking for forgiveness as opposed to permission. The Airbnb operators, and I know there's, if not hundreds, there's close to hundreds in our town, are asking for neither forgiveness or permission. They're just running a completely illegal operation. So this is a very nebulous area, and I do think that we have to put, and we've discussed this a decade ago, and we'll discuss it probably a decade from now. Probably not all of us, but some of us will. But I do think that we have to find a way to get some equity for anyone running any operation here. We can't allow two levels, those who come forward and pay fees for licensing and all that and run above the board, or those who sneak. I'm not saying sneak, those who run outside of our guidelines. So my comment to Councillor Belanger's original request for amendment isn't that it should be January 1st, 2023, or the date the bylaw gets amended, whichever comes later. I think it should be whatever comes earlier. So in other words, if we put the pressure, because the staff have nothing else to do, if we kind of push, suggest to staff this is an important item and we would like it to be addressed sooner than later, then it should be the sooner date. So if this gets resolved in September, October, November, then that's great. If it goes to January 1st, 2023, then the council of the day will have to make a decision on it. So I don't think it should be the latter of two. It should be the sooner of two. That's my comment on that. So again, I do believe though, and I know this council, previous council, and several before that have tried to address it. I think we need to continue to challenge our staff to find something that'll work in a truly evolving society, because Airbnb didn't really exist when bed and breakfast came to our town. So we have to recognize that the world is changing, and we have a lot of sand, we can't stick our head in it and avoid the rest of the world. So on that, I'll go to Councillor Wells, and then I'll open it up if staff have comments on any of this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. I think you led into some of what I was going to comment on. I mean, Airbnb, as you said, didn't exist, and it is a different model, and we have rules around it. And yes, there are probably a whole pile of people that are breaking the zoning rules about Airbnb being in a residential zone. But there's no such thing as a hybrid. You either are Airbnb or you're bed and breakfast. And bed and breakfast has certain licensing requirements. I will not support option 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. I'm more with Councillor Watson. I will support 2. I will vote against anything else because there's no question. This operation, much as I like the owner, and I'm not attempting in any way to place her in any kind of jeopardy, but it is operating in a fashion which is not legal within our zoning. And to simply extend it for a year and say, well, okay, you go for another year, we are establishing a serious precedent that I believe any other individual can now come forward and say, well, now I want to operate my B&B, and here's what I'm going to be doing. We've established a precedent that we may not want to, but at least may not be able to get out of going forward. So again, I will not support the 3. I would support 2, but that's just me.
Thank you for that. I am looking at several staff there that if anyone would like to make a comment from staff related to this issue, there you go. We'll start with Doug, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a few points of clarification. On the first one is in terms of the business at 7 Simcoe advertising as an Airbnb. In planning staff researching this matter, we learned from the bylaw department that bed and breakfasts are allowed to advertise on Airbnb, provided that they are very clear that it's a bed and breakfast business. It's not an Airbnb. So the operator is not at fault on that in terms of their advertisement operations. Also, in terms of the stoves or the cooking or culinary facilities in each of the rooms, staff acknowledge in the report that although zoning signed off on the use, we don't do a site visit. The site visit occurs with the bylaw department and the fire department and building sometimes, but they're not looking at detailed zoning criteria. So the stoves were there and the owner was issued business licenses, notwithstanding there was a zoning noncompliance, and staff had site visited and not picked up on that zoning noncompliance. So staff, in taking this approach of allowing somewhat of an amnesty, are trying to respect the fact that the business owner should be treated fairly moving forward and given some breathing room. We recognize that we are very much in a changing scenario. The staff report identifies that. There's a graph that from Whistler that identifies the shifting from bed and breakfast to Airbnbs. So that's why Airbnbs are somewhat of a boutique topic, i.e. short-term rental, in terms of what we're looking at in updating our official plan permissions and our zoning permissions. So I just wanted to provide a committee with a balanced opinion on the operations at 7 Simcoe. The owner-operator has been very forthright with us, has not tried to hide anything. They've been So we kind of respect that from a staff point of view.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else there? Joel, you look like you want to say something. I don't know.
Thank you, Chair Foster. The only point I would have been making was the point that Doug elaborated on, which was that Airbnb is merely the form in which it is advertised. It's not necessarily the function of the site. So as long as the function of the site is being used as an Airbnb, and that's clear within the advertisement, bed and breakfast can be essentially advertised through the application of Airbnb.
Okay. All right. We've had a thorough and convoluted discussion on this. I'll go back originally to Councillor Belanger, because the original request was an amendment to the resolution that we had to, and perhaps, Joe, you can redo your wording for my benefit if you want to continue to move that forward.
Given the comments, and I think the general indication is I'll withdraw my amendment. I'm just hopeful that we can review the bylaw and have it done prior to the date that's indicated, so that we're not sitting here doing this again without the bylaw having been reviewed. Thank you.
You're muted, David.
Could you not tell who I was pointing to when I did that? I'll actually let the CAO go first, and then you, Councillor Watson. Go ahead, George Vadabancourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 2 points. The first point, I just want to elaborate a little further on the Director of Planning and Economic Initiatives. He touched on a little weakness in our system with respect to inspections and whatnot. And since this has come up, we have taken steps now to rectify that, so that when inspections are done, it's done with full knowledge in terms of what the planning requirements are, so that we're not just looking at the technical piece that, oh yes, that's connected, or yes, that's safe from a fire perspective. We're looking at things from a perspective as well, does it meet the zoning requirements? So we've addressed that internally. And the second point I wanted to make is with respect to a similar situation, and you may wonder, why did staff pick the January 1st, 2023? And it was to align the date with the exemptions provided under the patio program. And if you recall, under the patio program, the restaurateurs are setting up in the parking lot in front of their establishments, or adjacent their establishments, and Council, in its wisdom, has granted exceptions to the zoning bylaw, the site plan control bylaw, on a temporary measure to allow for these businesses to have these patios because of the restrictions for COVID. So, looking at the date and aligning the time frame, it was felt that the January 1st, 2023 was a reasonable approach, and there was some consistency with respect to the relief of zoning requirements for a period to allow for the review of this internally. So that's where that date came from. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watson, and then Councillor Wells, please.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. And just going back to the advertising and Airbnb, yeah, I'm aware bed and breakfast can advertise on that, but I also see in the report that that they were asked to correct the advertisements, which include kitchen facilities as an amenity, and it goes on to say multiple conversations and follow-ups were required before compliance was ultimately achieved. So, you know, there is an issue with the advertising on there, whether it's allowable on a B&B site or not, and that to me is a gain. That's a lot of staff time going back, you know, with it should have been corrected right away, and it wasn't. Multiple conversations, so it's a problem. And I can't support number 3 unless it's going to go to all the bed and breakfasts in town and allow them the same opportunity. It can't be specific in my mind at this point.
Okay, Councillor Wells, then your worship.
Thank you, David. With all due respect to the CAO, I don't see a comparison between bed and breakfast Airbnb and patios. Patios are in commercial areas, largely not having any impact whatsoever on neighboring residential areas. So again, with due respect, I see it as lemons and oranges. There's definitely, in my mind, you're really stretching it to try to make a comparison between the two.
Okay, Your Worship, then Councillor Kinney, then we have to actually, I think, move on to making a decision here.
Okay, thank you. Just a question to Joel. Are you aware of any other B&Bs in town that would be in a similar situation as this, that, and if there was, would you be bringing forward a report to council to assist them if they were having issues as well? Obviously, keeping in mind the January 1st, 2023 wouldn't be to extend them all over the map.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we have reached out to the bed and breakfasts that are licensed. I believe that was done through bylaw. And of the 13 licensed bed and breakfasts, I don't think that there was any type of interest to get to a point where kitchen facilities might be something that would be permitted. And I think what was noted from the businesses that we were reached out to is that they were concerned with health and safety as well as a liability. And I don't believe from the first initial reach out that we did for those businesses that there was any type of interest to have those kitchen facilities as a permitted use. So to that note, I don't believe that there would be another report going forward to permit it for the other properties, as it didn't seem that there was an interest coming from those business owners.
Thank you. Is that good, Your Worship? Yeah, okay. Then Councillor Kinney.
Thank you, Chair Foster. I'll make mine quick. I can't struggle past point 2 or option 2, just because, as I've heard and we've listened to, the property owner with good knowledge put in facilities, and yes, we may have missed the zoning act and stuff, but I would think a good operator would have thought, okay, I'm a B&B and I'm in a residential. If I move from that, then what's the zoning issues I might arise? So I can't move past point 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The actual last comment is going to Deputy Mayor Bray, please.
Thank you for allowing me. I think we might be losing track of the fact that we are hopefully post-COVID. I respect the CAO's comments that we're tying this into the patio extensions. Businesses are still struggling. If somebody created a business or changed their business to get through the last couple of years, I'm not comfortable saying, nope, as of today, you can't do what you were doing. If you do a quick search of Airbnb for Wasaga Beach, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. So if we want to pick one who's trying to work with us to follow the rules and develop the rules, I just don't know that this is the time to be doing that. I would like to allow the time for the comprehensive review and for zoning. And I'm not saying I'm 100% in support of Airbnb in every residential neighborhood, but if you do a quick survey of the room, most of us have probably stayed in an Airbnb in another community. So I think this is bigger and quicker than we can make, and I think staff has come up with a good compromise. So I definitely support the recommendation as it's written.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I will note that every time someone at this table says we seem to be near the end of COVID, it flares up. So can we just ban that conversation forever? So the way I'm looking at this, there has actually been an excellent conversation, and I appreciate everyone going into it deeply. It looks like we're looking between the original resolution, which suggests option number 3, or option number 2. So from my point of view, I will just ask, because the original resolution says 3, do we have enough people who might be, request to speak from Her Worship? Go ahead.
No, I wasn't trying to rush you there. I was just going to say I would move the motion that is in our agenda if there's a seconder.
Okay, yeah, and okay, so I'll do that. And those who are in favor of option 2 can choose to, Councillor Wells, go ahead, please.
Okay, well, it may be redundant now. I was going to move an amendment to option 2.
Okay, well, let's see if option 3 has legs, okay? And then if it doesn't pass, then option 2 can be brought forward as a new resolution. Oh, okay. So here's the resolution that the Development Services section of Coordinated Committee recommend that Council direct staff to request on the request to permit kitchen facilities to remain within a licensed bed and breakfast establishment located at 7 Simcoe Street on a temporary basis until January 1st, 2023. And that the planning staff recommend that the council direct planning, and that the planning staff recommended that council direct planning staff to update the zoning bylaw provisions and definition associated with kitchen culinary facilities in regard to tourist establishments, bed and breakfast for synchronicity. And that the Development Services section of Coordinated Committee consider recommendation of the planning staff option number 3 of this staff report dated February 10th, 2022. Good use of the word synchronicity, Doug. I will say, do I have a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Belanger and Deputy Mayor Bray. I will ask for the vote then. All those in favor, please. And those opposed? That is carried 4-3. Thank you very much.
Chair Foster, you're on mute.
Who was the president who said read my lips? Anyway, we come to the end of that. I'll flip it over to general government section. I believe that's the deputy mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Foster. We will proceed with the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee. There was a deputation a little bit earlier in the day. We have nothing on our unfinished business, no other agency reports, and our consent agenda today has had 3 items identified. The first one to be pulled will be 6.5.3, 6.5.5, and then I believe 6.5, sorry, there's one more for comments, which is 6.6.4. AMO policy update. If Councillor Foster would like to make his comments before we vote on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's actually not about the, well, it is the AMO. It's the second part there, or third part, maybe the Ontario gas tax boost. And I do want
Councillor Foster, sorry, did you change your volume to your phone?
No. Okay. Never mind. I'm pulling item.
We can still hear you. It's just kind of hard to hear, but we can hear you still.
Okay. My point being the gas tax is a benefit to our town. Increase back gas tax is a benefit to us. That's all. End of story. Thank you.
Thank you. You sound a little tinny, kind of like a Mickey Mouse. But we got the message. Gas tax is good, and it's being boosted even better. Okay, so the 2 items that will be pulled for separate vote are 6.5.3 and 6.5.5. Seeing none, no others. Resolved that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee hereby received the February 10th, 2022 consent agenda, items 6.4 through to 6.6, that the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding the agenda items pulled from the motion, which will be voted on separately. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Kinney, Councillor Watson, all in favor? And that motion carries unanimously. So then the first item to be pulled is item 6.5.3. And I just want to point out that a conflict of interest has been declared by Councillor Watson, Councillor Belanger, Councillor Foster, and myself, Deputy Mayor. So I will be passing the chair for this motion over to Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just going through my iPad here to find the motion so I know what to read. Just give me a moment to slip through it all. 6.5.3. Okay, so this is with respect to the grants program, and each member of council had the opportunity to recommend a grant amount, and then it was averaged out. So the motion reads that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee recommend to council that it approve the grants listed under average grant award column from Appendix A to this report under the annual municipal grants program. Now we have several people who have stepped aside. I think it leaves us maybe 4. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the? Anyone wishing to speak to the motion? Oh, Councillor Belanger, I guess, also withdrew. So I don't see any other persons wishing to speak. So, oh, Councillor Belanger, I thought you had withdrawn for a conflict.
I just want clarification. I thought we were just withdrawing for a specific grant application that we would vote on those separately, so for instance, all those that.
No, I understand what you're saying, but it was determined earlier that it was a package deal.
Yeah, but wasn't there just 3 people left? That's not enough to vote.
It is the quorum when 4 people have withdrawn. We are still at a full quorum because of the withdrawals. Okay, so again, anyone wishing to speak to it? So I'll ask the question, all in favor? And mine is in favor as well, obviously. So the vote really is 3-0 with 4 people abstaining due to conflict. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Next item on the agenda is 6.5.5, Director of Building and Development Standards and Chief Building Officials Report, dated February 10th, 2002, Sustainable Future, Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation in the town of Wasaga Beach. And I believe Councillor Foster wanted to speak to this item.
Thank you. Do I have volume again? Okay, good. I had to sign out and come back on. I guess the reason I wanted to pull it as opposed to just comment on it is I think this shows not only what we've done historically, but it shows that we're I believe we've moved quickly to try and at least promote our historical changes looking towards dealing with climate issues. So we've done those things. I remember in 2012 in London, Ontario, Kevin Lalonde and a bunch of us were there, and we saw a display of LED street lights back then that have a 27-year life expectancy and a very good carbon footprint. So it became part of our town. And so this report just shows not only that we've done it, but that and we probably weren't really good at telling people we did it, but when we were asked, we've responded very quickly. So I think it's an important report, and to me, it was worth pulling out and voting on separately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. I agree. I think we quietly do a lot of things that are the right things, and sometimes we just don't know what it is we should be promoting because you're not sure who wants to hear what on what day of the week. If I could get a mover and a seconder for this motion, Councillor Foster. And a seconder, please. Councillor Watson. Sorry, you were hidden. That the general government section of
Deputy Mayor, Councillor Watson was asking to speak. He wasn't seconding the motion.
Well, it'd be a lot quicker if you seconded it. Councillor Watson, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I appreciate Councillor Foster's comments because I remember we go to these conferences and we learn a lot at them. We've been deprived of these conferences over the last 2 years of COVID, where where we do. We learn a lot at them, and we move quickly on them. The LED lighting throughout town, we started that program that goes through. But, I just want to point out that, we have 4,600 acres in the municipality that are all preserved under the Ontario Parks program. We have probably one of the best tree canopies in Canada in this community. If you fly over in a small plane, it's nothing but trees. And they say, trees are the lungs of the world. And we got that going. And I think between this report, it shows what we've done in the past and where we're going. And I think we're doing a great job in protecting the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. If I could make one comment, I know the Healthy Community Network had discussed dark sky initiatives with our Public Works Department. And despite the subdivision agreement being pulled from the agenda, when I read through the details of one that was on today's agenda, that had become one of the requirements, that the streetlights in the new subdivision were dark sky compliant. So I think we are truly quietly moving forward with a lot of great initiatives. Councillor Boulanger?
Yes, thank you. I agree that we've done a lot, but I think there's a lot still to do beyond provincial legislation, beyond what we've done. A lot of it too is not just council, but it's how we communicate to residents, that there's a lot they can do within their own residence to improve the situation. And certainly on the development front, I don't believe we've considered any incentives yet, but a lot of our developments are not nearly as green as what's possible. I think actually just north of Kingston in the Westport is the first zero emission subdivision in Canada going up right now. So there's still lots of opportunity. So I think we can be very proud of what we've accomplished, but also realize that there's a lot more work to be done. Thank you.
Mayor Byfuglien?
Thank you. I think I said this at the last meeting when it was discussed, but this is just the first staff report. There will be more coming forward. We've asked the group when myself and the CIO and department heads met with them a few weeks back that if they are aware of other initiatives elsewhere, to by all means share them with us. We certainly can't do everything, and some are better handled at other levels of government, but absolutely if there's initiatives that the general public can also be doing, we would like to hear from those and we can help promote them. So it will be ongoing, this discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, moving back to the motion will be moved by Councillor Foster. If I could have a seconder. Councillor Kinney, that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee receive for information this follow-up report on the current actions being taken by town staff to mitigate the effects of climate change and the ongoing adaptation actions in place of our day-to-day operations that ensure a sustainable future for our residents. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. So next on the agenda is item 6.7.1, which is a notice of motion. And I just wanted to reach out to the clerk to see if I needed to pass the chair for a notice of motion that I had brought forward, or if I can continue to chair.
Your Worship, I believe that you would pass the chair to the co-chair, and then you would move the motion as it is your notice of motion and speak to it.
Thank you. Then I apologize for the short turnaround time, Councillor Wells, but I will be passing the chair for item 6.7.1 as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the privilege, Deputy Mayor. So we have 6.7.1. This is a notice of motion coming from the Deputy Mayor. And I will read the motion and then look for seconders and any conversation. So the motion reads, whereas, and before I start, Deputy Mayor, you certainly made it long enough. Whereas municipal governments provide essential services to the residents and businesses in their communities. And whereas the ability to provide those services is negatively impacted by exponentially rising insurance costs And whereas one driver of rising insurance costs is the legal principle of joint and several liability, which assigns disproportionate liability to municipalities for an incident relative to their responsibility for it. And whereas the Government of Ontario has the authority and responsibility for the legal framework of joint and several liability, and whereas the Premier of Ontario committed to review the issue in 2018 with a view to helping municipal governments manage their risks and costs, and whereas the Association of Municipalities on behalf of municipal governments has provided recommendations to align municipal liability with the proportionate responsibility for incidents and capping awards, now therefore it be resolved the town of Wasaga Beach does hereby support AMO's recommendations, and further be it resolved that the town of Wasaga Beach does hereby call on the Attorney General of Ontario to work with municipal governments to put forward a plan of action to address joint and several liability before the end of the government's current term, so that municipalities can continue to offer high quality services to their communities. End of motion. I guess that my only comment is that provincial government having it done by the end of their term is somewhat questionable, because their term doesn't look to be lasting much longer, maybe June at the most. Anyway, I see no. Do I have a mover and a seconder first to put the motion on the table? Councillor Kinney, Deputy Mayor Bray.
Councillor Wells, it would be moved by Deputy Mayor Bray.
Okay, sorry, moved by Deputy Mayor Bray and seconded by Councillor Kinney. Any comments? I see Councillor Watson first, and Councillor Belanger second, and Councillor Foster third.
I believe Deputy Mayor Bray would speak first.
Deputy Mayor Bray
would speak first. Councillor Wells.
Speak first. It's her motion.
Thank you very much. This motion is a result of a recommendation from AMO, so it's not entirely my wording. It's a little lengthier than probably something I would draft, but I think it's very, very timely, very, very important. Insurance rates are going up, certainly for small business, certainly for residential units, but for municipalities, they're going up at a greater rate than anywhere else. So we saw this when we saw our request come from our treasurer, I believe it was last week, that our insurance rates in 2021 went up 12.3%, but in 2022, we saw a 36.5% increase. So it's really, really difficult to maintain cost of living tax increases to your municipality when you're having to deal with increases of those kinds of level. I also sit on the Finance and Audit Committee at County Council, where they spend over $5 million a year on insurance between the Simcoe Housing Corporation and between County Council. And their rates last year were 14% and 25% increased respectively. So these are unsustainable rate increases. This isn't new. Every single conference I've been to in the last 7 years, this has been a topic. It's been a breakout session. We've talked about joint several and liability, but nothing has been done. The government has been there for a number of years now. They've reviewed it left, right, and center. They haven't done anything. And I really thought that when AMO put out that call for urgent action, I think it was really, really important that all the municipalities reach out and pass a motion. Happy to say one was passed at County Council this week, and I'm hoping for support today for this motion at this table too. So thank you.
I think it would be a good question to ask any candidates for provincial election coming this June. It would be an excellent question. What is your position on joint and several liability? Anyway, going forward, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Deputy Mayor said pretty much everything I was going to say. I was going to agree with the point that as long as I've been on council, it's been a topic. It never seems to get moved forward, and I'm really hoping with AMO pushing with this that we will get there, because it's tremendously important with those kinds of increases. Thank you for bringing it forward. And
Councillor Belanger.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wells. I just wanted to add that in a lot of the articles lately related to the rising cost of insurance, it also a major contributing factor was weather volatility and the number of extreme weather events that are occurring across Canada. And certainly, you know, recently the tornado in Barrie, all of those things, they don't just raise the insurance cost within that specific area. These companies do business nationally, and so anything that all municipalities can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions will be a step forward in reducing insurance costs as well. Thank you.
Councillor Foster, I think you were next.
Thank you. And again, I'm kind of reflecting Councillor Watson's comments. I believe the first time I heard joint and several liability was out of the mouth of Dalton McGuinty in 2004 at an AMO conference. And I've heard it from Kathleen Wynne and from Ford. And anyway, I certainly wish that this idea of having it done before the end of this term of provincial council works. Deputy Mayor Bray, you're an optimist if nothing else. Thank you.
Councillor Kinney, did I see your card?
Thank you, Chair Wells. No, you didn't, but I'll take the opportunity to say something. Actually, I support Deputy Mayor's motion wholeheartedly because I see it as I won't even say an overlook by provincial legislations. It's something that should have, could have, and if we can make it happen this term or very soon in next year, it'll help all of Ontario move forward economically and get back to recovery, because I think that's part and parcel of what we're trying to do here. Thank you, Chair Wells.
And Mayor Bifolchi, I think I saw your card.
You didn't. I'm in support of it, though.
I'm sorry. Okay, everybody's had their say. The motion's been read, and I'm not reading it again. All those in favor of the motion? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. And thank you, Council. The following section of our agenda is closed session. So resolve that pursuant to section 239(2)A and K of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, the next portion of the February 10th, 2022 coordinated committee meeting will move into closed session to discuss the security of the property of the municipality or local board and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. If I could have, I have a mover, Councillor Kinney, and a seconder, Councillor Foster, all in favor? And that motion carries unanimously. Dina, if you can just let me know when we are closed.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bray. We should be live now.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back. We returned from closed session with 3 motions. The first being 8.1, with the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee, confirm the direction provided in closed session to the Director of Public Works pertaining to a lease matter. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Wells and Councillor Kinney, all in favor? And that motion carries unanimously. Item 8.2, the Coordinator of Fundraising and Sponsorships report, that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee confirms the direction provided to the Coordinator of Fundraising and Sponsorship in closed session pertaining to a financial agreement matter. A mover, please, and a seconder. Councillor Kinney, Councillor Watson, all in favor? That motion carries 6-0 unanimously. I would just like to point out that Councillor Foster left us at a certain point during the closed session. He passed along his regrets, so we are now Council of 6. But he did take part in the majority of the conversation that did take place. Item 8.3, the CAO's report, the property matter, that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee confirmed the direction provided to the CAO in closed session pertaining to a property matter. If I could have a mover, please, and a seconder. Mayor Byfolchi, Councillor Kinney, and all in favor. On that motion carries 6-0 unanimously. Thank you very much. Seeing nothing else on the agenda except for the adjournment. Have a great day, everybody.